Good afternoon. This is Jim from Off Day with Ballpark Nation, of course, with Andy and Jim. Andy, you look bundled up. You got your coffee. Are we still a little chilly down in Houston?
It's in the 50s, but there's no sunlight, and 50s with no sunlight's not warm. Also, I'm an old man, so I don't do the hoodie and shorts thing.
You're not like the senator from Pennsylvania?
Correct.
Yeah. You couldn't have put some pants on for the inauguration, man. Like it's just cold outside.
So here's the thing. I do understand you have stroke and it limits your motor capabilities, but I am certain that somebody in his life would help him button up a shirt for 2 days a year.
And he was doing this before the stroke.
Sure.
It's just he's a man of the people kind of guy.
Is that what we're going with? Not just I want to wear a hoodie and that's it?
And you can't.
I get the urge. I really do. But I also know that I can't show up to my job and get paid the way I get paid wearing a hoodie. So
right. I normally wear a hoodie, but we're getting observed today for our accreditation. And I don't think my accreditor likes me very much. I asked him if he's seen a lot of film programs, and he said, no, but the ones I do usually suck. I was like, whoa, that's a good first impression. Appreciate that.
That's great.
But that's not why we're having the show today. We get to say goodbye to Ryan Pressly, the trade that he has been, I won't say holding up, because the man has time to talk to his family about whether he wants to move or not. Went through. He is going to be a Chicago Cub, which means remember a couple of years ago when we just kept trading with the Blue Jays? Are they our new friends now? Are we just going to trade with the Cubs nonstop?
This is hard for me because I am, I wouldn't say coming of age, but still the memories of the mid-'90s, late 90s are still fresh in my mind, where we didn't like the Cubs very much. They were in our division, and you had to deal with Kerry Wood, Carlos Zambrano, and that crew. So I don't know if they're friends. They're useful idiots. Let's call them that.
It's funny is some of the Cubs fans would also agree with that assessment about the Cubs, that they're just useful idiots for us. A trade's good when both sides think it was one-sided about the other team, and you're hearing a lot of that from both Cubs Twitter and Astros Twitter. I want to get into Ryan Pressly's legacy, but just the logistics of the trade. We got back – we paid less – I'll tell you what, we're paying less of the contract than I would have guessed going in. We're only paying $5.5 million of his contract, and we got a nobody prospect. But overall, how do you feel like the trade felt to you from an Astros fan perspective?
I'm fine with it. I understand what it was at its face, and for the people calling it a salary dump, it is to an extent. I don't think you can get away from the idea that we were $4 million-ish over the first tier of this competitive balance tax. I just want to call it a salary cap. I don't know why we don't just call it a salary cap, other than the union gets their panties in a wad about it. It's a soft cap. That's what it is. But I also think that now with trading Pressly, we're $4 million, $5 million under that salary cap. So great. Good for Jim Crane and good for Jim Crane's pocketbook, and really good for the flexibility the Astros have going forward. I know we all know the deal we think is going to happen as a result of this new room, but even if that doesn't happen, this gives you the ability to go shopping either prior to spring training or sometime by the All-Star break to pick up whatever you need to fill whatever holes present themselves. I mean, most of us would say there's a hole in the outfield right now. There's probably a way to solve that with the roster that exists that we've all talked about that we're not talking about today. But there's it was a necessary thing. I think also from just a Pressly standpoint, he's a guy that needs to be a closer. And I know there is no statistical analysis that proves this out, but we've both talked about it for a couple of years. He just doesn't perform well as a setup guy. He performs really well in the closer role. And he's going to a place that should be a division title contender in Chicago with the addition of him and Kyle Tucker and some other moves that the Cubs have made. Where he's going to get, at least initially, that opportunity to be the ninth inning guy again. And good for him. I don't know that he had a real place on the Astros other than being a really good seventh inning guy. And he struggled in that role with us last year. Not to the point that Cub fans seem to think he did. It's not like he fell off the map or anything. And I know for Astros fans, our last memory is game 2 of the wild card series, wasn't great, but Hader also wasn't great in that game. So I don't know how much of that's on Presley. But it is, not without regret that he's gone, but I think it's a good mood for both sides, regardless of what we got back. I agree with you on how much contract we picked up. I think that Juan Bello, whoever he is, whatever he turns out to be, is a symptom of how much we were willing to pay down Presley's contract. If we had decided we were paying down $7 million or $10 million of that $14 million, I think you get a different profile prospect. I think we basically paid $5.5 million for Juan Bello, who is a 20-year-old guy who had a really good season in single A ball last year. So it's not quite a lottery ticket, but it is, he's a couple of years away if he's ever going to be a major leaguer.
Let's talk a little bit about Presley's legacy then. Astros fans, some of them are going to be able to take a healthy look at the length of his career and recognize what he was, which is one of the best closers in the history of the team. Some are going to just look at the struggles last year and think that was what his whole legacy was like. Winning a World Series, his family clearly liked being here, was a real difference maker when he was first traded to us from the Twins. Overall, what is Presley's legacy for you?
I think arguing that first or second best closer in franchise history, he's in that conversation. It's hard. We're going to get into this debate again with Billy Wagner now being a Hall of Famer. The same debate you get about Altuve versus Bagwell. Well, who's more valuable, with the guy that has a 72 WAR or the guy who won 2 World Series? It's baseball fans are very fickle with that. When you don't win a World Series, it doesn't matter. The regular season is the only thing that matters. When you do win a World Series, the perspective changes. And from that perspective, Presley certainly is the best closer the franchise has had because he's had the most opportunity in those situations to be good. And his 2022 season, especially in the postseason, was historic. 10 innings pitched, 10 appearances, didn't give up a run, struck out 13 in those 10 appearances. I mean, it was dominant. He earned the name America's closer. I guess, do they have to pay the Cowboys rights for that? Whenever you're American,
I don't think the Cowboys are in the position to ask for money from anything except for maybe money from the fans back. But we're going to talk a little Brian Schottenheimer before we get out of here today. I know we don't talk a lot of pro football, but
I think the other thing that legacy wise that Presley did for the Astros is he was immediate proof that the pitching lab was alive and well. When he was acquired in 2018, he had made already 51 appearances for the Twins prior to being traded, and he had generated 0.7 WAR at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He made 26 appearances for the Astros in the remainder of the season and doubled that. And that is a direct result of our pitching staff, our pitching lab, looking at what he does and what he does well. And his main asset at that point was spin rate. He's a guy that could spin the ball, and he's a guy that spin rate is something that we absolutely understood how to deal with at that point. Still do. But he became an all-star closer twice, where he was kind of a middling guy for the first 7 years of his career, 5-6 years of his career with Minnesota. So he's a guy, when you talk about pitchers that the Astros have fixed or improved or however you want to put that, Presley's got to be top of that conversation because he's not somebody it was not a big deal that we picked up Ryan Presley in 2018. It was another piece to be a setup guy where you needed some bullpen pieces. Turned him into one of the best closers.
Wife beater was the closer at that time, right?
Yes.
Or not the himself beater. It was the wife beater. Okay, I can't remember.
The wife beater. Yeah, that was Osuna. That was in 2018. So anyway, Presley's got to be up there, and I laugh because on both Blue Sky and Twitter, people are saying, "Well, he's got to be considered an Astros Hall of Famer." I said, "Well, yeah, everybody is."
I mean, yeah.
Shane Reynolds is, so everybody
have they ever actually released any criteria to be in the Astros Hall of Fame?
No, that is the Astros Hall of Fame is all about vibes, and I'm fine with it. No, I mean, it ultimately doesn't matter, but you're going to make an argument for literally anybody. Tony Eusebio could be an Astros Hall of Famer, and might be. He might be. I don't know. They put in a bunch of people those first 2 years, so who knows?
Yeah, they really got rid of all the clear cut candidates. Made it after year 2, so now it really is I mean, honestly, let's put Tony Eusebio in. Why not? Let's do it.
I mean, he had the longest hitting streak for the team for a couple of years. It was all singles, and I think he batted 225 during that streak, but still. One hit a game, that's all you need.
That's all you need. One going ground ball with eyes. You think
Wrigley
Field goes? Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, Wrigley Field is going to play to Presley's strengths.
Presley, when he's on, is a ground ball pitcher, so the park is almost indifferent. When he's bad, he gives up, like everybody else, long fly balls that turn into home runs. I think that, again, I think for him it's such a confidence thing, and being the ninth inning guy is somehow part of his mental makeup that he becomes that ground ball pitcher again. I don't think he strikes out guys at the level that he was when he was at his peak, because he's going to be 36. He doesn't throw as fast as hard as he did 2 years ago. But I think he's still going to be a guy that has a superior spin and generates a lot of ground balls. It'll be up to the Cubs and their infield defense, especially, to determine how successful that is.
I saw I forgot who it was giving grades to off seasons, and they gave the Astros an incomplete on the contingency of whether Bregman does or doesn't sign. They gave the Cubs a C, and I just don't see how you rationalize that with them acquiring. They had no bullpen. They got a good bullpen piece, and they got arguably the best right fielder in baseball right
now. In general, it's because most of these people that are doing power rankings for off-season moves are going for clicks and don't really care. But B, I think there's a prejudice for getting younger and better. Okay. Brian Presley's not a young piece. Had you given them Brian Abreu, I think that bumps them up past a C. Instead, you gave him Ryan Presley. And Brian Abreu was never on the table. Please don't take what I just said that way, but that's the best example I could come with on the current roster. It is what it is. The Cubs have a lot of holes. They had a lot of holes before that. They have slightly fewer holes, but they still have question marks. And if you talk to Cub fans right now, they would tell you. My message to Cub fans is enjoy Kyle Tucker for the year that you have him, and maybe you work something out and he's there longer. I think he's going to be a free agent guy, and I think that's part of that calculus as well, is that these are not long-term pieces that the Cubs acquired. The other thing with Ryan Presley, Cubs fans, is he's going to have base runners. And if you don't like seeing base runners from your closer, it's probably best just to look at the box score after the game's over, because it's going to work out for him. But he's going to walk a guy. He's going to give up a single. There's going to be runners on. You're going to wonder how it's going to work out. It's going to work out. You'll be fine.
He'll be fine. So I guess, all the national media, and including a guy named Boob Nightingale, has said the signing of Alex Bregman is imminent. How sure are you that it's going to happen?
Well, I'm not sure at all. I am sure that whatever happens, it will be immediately after we finish recording. And it will require us to either pretend it didn't happen or completely re-record this episode. So there's that. I think that this move was made with another move in mind. Now, what that other move is, if it's Alex Bregman, which everybody seems to think it's going to be, great. If it's to sign Jason Verdugo, okay. I think there's another move coming for the Astros. From a competitive balance tax situation, we were over, we're now under any taxes. If the proposed Bregman deal was to be signed, or a player of that salary level was to be acquired somehow, you would be still under the second tier of the CBT. And I think that second tier is where the target is at this point. Because despite, again, what Astros Twitter will continue to tell you, Jim Crane spends money on payroll. He might not always spend it wisely, Jose Abreu, Rafael Montero, but he does spend money. The fact is, you just don't like how he spends his money sometimes. And that's, your prerogative, I guess. But I think there's another move to be had. I think this was the move that had to be made for whatever that next move is to be a viable possibility.
What does your gut tell you?
You have an entire season to worry about the competitive balance tax, because it's not assessed until December, basically.
Well, And I think I was reading a Rome article where he says, Cranes points out that Cranes absolutely okay with spending a lot of money, and he likes that big splash, and this would definitely be that.
Yeah. And realistically, I think the tax, I saw somebody calculate it, and you're not going to check the veracity of it, but it made sense to me, would be like $18 million above the payroll. Okay, that's Rafael Montero. You've already made a bad signing once, spend it again. It's not that big a deal.
Right.
So I think it's going to happen, but that and $7 will now buy you coffee that's non-Colombian.
Apparently, we don't grow any coffee here. I read that on Twitter.
We don't. I know this is not what we talk about here, but guess what? There's one place in the United States that grows coffee. It's Hawaii. You want to know how much they produce in a given year? 4,200 bags, 4,260-pound bags. And their capacity is actually diminishing because they've had some natural disaster issues. They've had the infrastructure issues, whatever. Colombia, on the other hand, is 12.76 million 60-pound bags a year. And they can increase production when they want to. They keep it artificially low. So there is not I'm going to drink American coffee. And for the guy that says, I'll just buy all my coffee from Starbucks, boy, I got some news for you.
Yeah.
They're not growing those beans in Seattle.
They certainly are not. We don't talk a lot of pro football on the show, but
because both our teams suck.
Yeah, well, it's true. At least yours made the playoffs. Brian Schottenheimer, what a wet blanket. Look, there's a world where it's a great hire. You pointed out to me when it happened that the Cowboys offense has not been the issue. Like this year wasn't great, but last year was a top 5 offense. The year before that, it was a top 5 offense. But what a wet blanket of a hire. And it just screams like another guy Jerry might be able to control.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate issue from my friends who are Cowboys fans have expressed, is that it's another yes man for not to question or rock the boat in the Jerry Jones world. Nobody's going to be excited about Brian Schottenheimer. There is a reason he's been an assistant for the last 10 years. And not because he's bad at his job, but just because there's not been a lot of impetus or animus to say, hey, maybe he's a guy who should run an entire franchise, because I don't think anybody actually believes that outside of Jerry Jones. You're going to see him for 3 years. And I think that what I read, and it's a very cynical take, and I hope this is not true for your sake. I have no feelings about the Cowboys one way or the other, is that this is the coach that gets you through Dak's contract. Because Dak's contract and CeeDee Lamb's contract, to a certain extent, are handcuffing what the franchise can do to fix some things, because there is not a Herschel Walker trade coming down to repair the problems that the team has, especially defensively, it looks like. So it's a guy that you might be replacing in 3 years. And at that point, Dak's contract will be up, and you're now acquiring the pieces through the draft, through smart free agents deals in the meantime, to be really good in 4 years. I don't think there's a Cowboy fans alive that wants to hear that we'll be good in 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, to your point. Also, Jerry's 82 years old. This contract might also get through the rest of his tenure as the biggest decision maker on the team, because at some point you're 85 years old. I will say this, though, for as much as I do agree with a lot of the complaint about, what Jerry does to meddle, how good he is. First, I hate the idea that sports fans think the people who own the money and spend the money should have nothing to say about what the money does. I think if you and I owned a baseball team, that wouldn't be the case. We would also want at least some input on what's happening. And 2, I was watching the movie Landman, and there's a scene with Jerry Jones and John Hamm, and he's talking about why he bought the Cowboys and how it's because he had always dreamed of working with his kids. Honestly, very moving scene. Jerry Jones actually did a great job as well. But when I heard that, it gave me a little bit more, leeway in how I feel about him, because he still won 3 Super Bowls in my lifetime. Not a lot of teams can say that, but also he felt like he was losing his kids, and the Cowboys became the opportunity to get them all back in his life. And I think, to me, I can't really fault him for looking at it that way.
Again, I have no skin in the game with the Cowboys or with Jerry Jones. From the outside looking in, though, you're right. He owns the team. He has a certain amount of right to do what he wants to do. My problem, and I think most football player or football fans' problem with Jerry Jones, is that if I'm working for somebody, I want them to rely on the experts they hire to make decisions and then hold them accountable for those decisions.
Sure.
And the perception is that's not what happens, is that Jerry Jones makes all the decisions and then holds the people who work for him accountable for his decisions. So
Yeah.
I could understand why that would be super frustrating. There have been some questionable things, up to and including the contract that you just gave Dax. I want to call him Dak Shepard, and that's not right. Dak Prescott.
It'd be cool if Dak Shepard played quarterback. Then we could see, that would be great. We'd have Veronica Mars on the sideline. I'd be
If you had Kristen Bell, I would tune in. I'd become a Cowboy fan.
Yeah.
Because she's a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I think that it's his team. He can do what he wants. I think if I'm a Cowboys fan, I'm concerned that his son, who is primed to take over whenever Jerry decides he doesn't want to be day-to-day guy, comes from the same ilk and might be the same level of meddling, but you don't really know that till it happens. I can tell you here in Houston, everybody hated Steve McNair, Mr. McNair's son, Cal, up until 2 years ago. And now he's, okay. So
I will say two things to that. One, there was actually a time when Jerry's son was running the draft. And that explains that little period where they built he was drafting linemen, he built it, and then Jerry sort of took over. And at least Jerry Jones, I feel like, has grown up around football. I mean, he's had a 30-year apprenticeship for that. So maybe in that time he learned to listen to people who know. I don't know, maybe.
Whatever. I guess I'm done with pro football this year because I have no interest in watching a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl again. I've got friends in Philadelphia who are going to be happy if the Eagles win or happy that they're going, and I guess I'll root for them from a distance. But I can't imagine a more boring matchup than what we're about to see on Super Bowl Sunday. I can't even imagine the NFL wants to see this matchup.
No, I mean, it's going to be all about seeing Taylor Swift at the Super Bowl. And frankly, I'm here for it. Although I never watched the Super Bowl, so I'm watching like 30
I will
years.
say this. I was listening to somebody this morning on the way in, and they were talking about how, the Chiefs are pushed down your throat, which I agree to at this some point, and it's all Taylor Swift. I unfortunately had to watch at least 2 Chiefs games this year while they played the Texans, and I think we saw Taylor Swift once during each game. So it is certainly not what was happening last year. But, the fans who were irritated by it last year can't let it go and are pretending it's still happening to the extent it was. I think that part's died down. And usually I will tune into the Super Bowl long enough to see the halftime show. It'll be on in the background while I'm doing something else. Yeah. And if it's an act I want to see for halftime, great. And then I'm done because it's kind of generally a compelling game.
Yeah, we'll be at the movies, I'm sure. All right. So I guess before we head out of here, let's get my percentage is Bregman and Astro by the time we record again Wednesday.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
I'm 55-45 that he's an Astro by the end of the week.
I think it's a foregone conclusion. I'm more at 90. All right, before we get out of here, though, let's look at our clips from the Astros, the Aggies, and the Longhorns.
Castellanos. There goes the runner. Fly ball down the right field line. Tucker comes on. Kyle Tucker. This time they finish the job. The Houston Astros, world champions.
Struck him out. It's over. They have won the College World Series.
Walk. Center field and deep. At the track, looking up, and that's off the batter's eye. Jace Laviolette in the first inning launches his 15th home run of the year.
if you're the Aggies, you literally could not ask for a better start. Just an incredible at-bat by Gavin Grahovic to get this started. That's 107 miles an hour off the bat, 430 feet from Jace Laviolette. Just a great job. That ball's down. He just stays all over and hammers it off the batter's eye.
All right, Andy, for you, I guess that's the end of our episode. Let's watch Twitter in 10 minutes whenever Bregman gets re-signed, and I'll see if I can edit our conversation into us being like, yes, he re-signed, and here's what's going to happen.
Hey, we do have a couple minutes. I do want to add on to our episodes last week. I feel really bad, and I, again, down this Saturday Night Live path just a little bit, if you'll indulge me, but I can't believe that I forgot about White Like Me. An incredible, groundbreaking skit that Eddie Murphy starred in, and it was one of the first really set pieces that was done. It wasn't on stage; it was filmed. Go on Peacock. They released over the weekend 50 sketches for 50 years, so it is, I guess, what they feel is the best sketch of each season. That's kind of how it feels like it played out, and a lot of the ones we talked about are there. But I can't believe that neither of us mentioned White Like Me, because it is outstanding and still holds up. Still holds up. And literally, what year is this? 40 years later.
Yeah, no, it's a great one. And speaking of, actually, we talked about cold opens. This weekend's would have gone on the list of one of the better ones, bringing in Lin-Manuel Miranda and to do nothing and having Trump just troll him, trying to make him laugh, which he almost did, was priceless. And it shows you the pool of the show that you get a guy like Lin-Manuel Miranda to pop in for 10 minutes. And then,
yeah, we're really interested, and we'll get to it as we get closer. But February 16th is the big 50th anniversary special, and it's, I think, at least 4 hours. If I was looking at my TV, the guide on my TV correctly, not TV Guide, because that doesn't exist anymore. There's a 4-hour block set aside for this, so it's going to be 4 hours of everything. And I assume there's probably going to be an hour lead up to it, like they do for award shows. So, if you're a Saturday Night Live fan, you've got, half a day planned, like it's Super Bowl.
In fact, just start watching him now while you keep refreshing Twitter. For Andy Tom Chesson, I'm Jim Christopher, and this has been Off Day with Ballpark Nation.